Sup? My name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com, and this is not a Slate Talk. It says Slate Talk right above me. I have not had a new one of these made. I should, because I want to do more of these videos that are kind of less specific Slate or picks content or whatever, and kind of more overall, here's the state of things stuff. Maybe it should be state of things talk. I don't know. But anyway, I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com. I'm going to be joined by Greg Ehrenberg today. He's the director of DFS content over at Stokastic, and also an avid OddsShopper poster, capper, better, whatever you'd like to reference yourself as. But he is very, very active in the betting streets and comes from a DFS background like a lot of us do, right? I mean, DFS is literally in your Twitter handle. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing that we'll talk about during this. We're going to talk a little bit about, the DFS and the sports betting industry. I just did a really long video on this. I'm not sure if everybody has gone and looked at that, but we're kind of at an interesting inflection point, I think, with the sports betting industry and the DFS industry and what both of them mean for one another. And I'll be happy to get Greg's thoughts on that. We're also going to talk about OddsShopper and the Tails marketplace and Paydirt and how you can utilize all of those things together. Do a little bit of a demo on how we set those things up. But I also just kind of want to pick Greg's brain on a lot of these things that are happening in the industry as well. So all of that said, Greg, how are you?
I'm good, man. Got New Year's just happened, the holidays, which obviously if people are watching this live, they'll already know that. But if somebody's watching this, a week or two after the fact, they get a little bit of a timestamp of when it is that you and I are chopping it up, talking through everything. And you and I also, if people don't know, James, one of the people who I very much like in the industry and consider you an internet friend. And we worked together very, very briefly at DraftKings, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something like that. 4 years ago. I forget the time frame.
Yeah. It was a while ago because it must have been 6 years ago, actually, because I started Paydirt. No, 7 years ago, maybe. I started Paydirt in 2020. The year before that, I was working at Numberball, and Numberball had to offer me $5,000 a month to stop working with DraftKings because they wanted me full time. So it had to have been 2018 that we had worked together at DraftKings. Kind of crazy to think about it that way. I don't think about things very often 7 years in the past. But yeah, we have worked together a bit. I love Greg. I think that he's super smart and really, really good at what he does specifically. And one of the things that you do is this $100 challenge for OddsShopper and for betting right now. And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that specifically first, because I have some thoughts on it as well. And I've been a little bit vocal about kind of like showing the tools versus the applicability of it for people. And I just want to hear kind of your thoughts on how it's going, and kind of the things that you would apply to a reasonable bettor from it.
Yeah. So the whole concept of it, it's proof of concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is how the tools work. This is how you could use them. And generally how I do the threads as well is I'm not posting every single bet from the OddsShopper Portfolio V tools to Twitter, because then, if I was posting 300 bets per day, why would anybody ever need to sign up? So
Right.
for myself, there are days if there's, massive NBA slates, massive NHL slates, I might be placing upwards of 200-300 bets even on some individual days. And then what I do is I take like a random sample size of those bets, I post them to Twitter, and that's what becomes the threads I do every day. If people aren't familiar with what James is talking about, I started the NBA season with a bankroll of $100 for the thread content I do. And then what you do with the OddsShopper Portfolio V tools, you put in your bankroll amount, you make portfolios of which books you're betting on, which for a lot of people, they can't bet on every book. A lot of it's because of location. If you live in certain states, you're only going to have a handful of books available to you. I live in New Jersey. I have a lot of books available to me. So what I tried to do is I did this around, at least for the thread, the books that most people are going to have access to: DraftKings, FanDuel, ESPN, Caesars, BetMGM. And then I make a thread of bets for the day. You plug your bankroll into the Portfolio EV tools, and then it's going to tell you not just what to bet, but how much you should be betting on each individual bet based on a number of factors. So it's, the expected EV of the bet, your bankroll, and just the optimal way to grow your bankroll based on our algorithm there. So the idea of this thread is that this is supposed to be for anybody of any level better, because our tools are also pretty affordable. It's $100 per month, but then for things like the holidays, for New Year's, we had it discounted to $25 per month. And anybody could sign up for this. And it doesn't matter if you have $1,000 bankroll, $10,000 bankroll, or even like this. I started with $100 and now it's
Yeah.
at, $600 after 50 something slates.
Yeah, it's at like 580 or something like that. So when I look at this, I always think to myself, okay, so from a realistic point of view, like and what I always tell to people is that this is, like you said, is proof of concept. And one of the things that I love about this as a proof of concept is that you can take kind of this idea and the OddsShopper tools and just run with it with whatever your bankroll is at. That being said, I have also cautioned people to think to themselves, how much do I actually want to make from this, right? And I think that one of the maybe unintended things about this project that you have been on is that it has kind of shown that people should probably save up a little bit before they start with this. Yes, you could do this with $100. Anybody, you have taken this and started with $100, and now you are up to around $600, which I think is great. But most people who are doing this, like when they are trying to decide how much money they want to make from this, one, I think the expectation is always wrong. I think people will always assume that they will make more money than they do. And two, most people would be better off getting a part-time job at Kohl's or something. Like if they start with $100, if you started with $1,000, that's much different, right? Like if you extrapolate up what you have been doing with a start of $1,000, you're making something like $40 or $50 an hour, and that's respectable. That's fine. With $100 though, there are so many people that would be better off just saving $100 every single month and then starting with $1,000 rather than starting with $100. Because right now you're at about $3 an hour or so. So it just shows, I think, like I said, unintended consequence of bankroll size matters and unit size matters. It's good to say that you're up X amount of units, but from a realistic perspective, I do think that it shows that people should probably consider saving up money before they jump into this kind of stuff.
To an extent, here's where I'm going to push back on this a little bit, though. Number one, it's not very time consuming. It's just telling you what to bet and the amount so you could place it in. Or if you're even shorter on time, there's a mass entry tool where you can just place all of the bets at once and group them together. The other thing, too, though, is a lot of people are betting recreationally and they're going to bet recreationally anyway. And also, the alternative for a lot of people is if they're not betting, they're going to find some other hobby. And it's almost a certainty that whatever other hobby they choose isn't going to have a return. So if you told somebody, which it's also one of the odd things about betting, is people be like, hey, and obviously there's limits to this. If somebody's losing a ton of money, they probably shouldn't be betting. But if somebody was just betting recreationally for $10, $20 a night, and even outside of just betting in a smart way, like my bankroll stuff, people say, well, if you're not profitable, you shouldn't be betting at all. Even that I don't totally agree with, because if somebody enjoys doing it, it's like, hey, don't do that. Go pick up golf instead or go to the movies. Well, what's your expected return at the movie theater or at the golf course? So no matter what hobby you have, this is one of the only ones you could have that there's a chance you're going to make money back. It's just what's a way that you could do it either responsibly, where you are going to either limit your losses, or do in a smart way you could actually get a return on the money you put into it.
Yeah, and that's the entertainment value, right? I mean, if you're getting your action in and you're watching and you're having fun and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't really matter that you're losing money. I mean, it costs $60 fucking dollars to go see a movie now. You probably lose that much in a day of betting if you're a small time bettor. But again, that's what comes down to the expectation. And this is something I did hit on in that really long DFS and sports betting video is the accessibility of sports betting and DFS as a hobby is kind of at risk right now because of the exorbitant prices that many sites are charging to use tools or projections or whatever, right? And that's a problem in and of itself. OddsShopper is relatively inexpensive at $100 a month. And think about that for a second. That is relatively inexpensive in our industry, is $100 a month. $100 a month is not small talk. for a lot of people that want to start a new hobby, right? I think that people would argue and say, oh, well, you don't need these tools. You don't need X, Y, or Z. You don't need OddsShopper in order to have fun. Yeah, sure. You're right. You don't. But there's a difference. I think the first step is doing something because you're interested in it. Then the second step is having fun with it. And then the third step is making it a hobby. And then the fourth step is making money from it. And figuring out where you are on that perspective, I think is really, really important for a lot of people who just don't even fucking think about it. They don't even think about it before they get into this stuff. Like, why are you getting into this? So I think that's a really important point to make, that this stuff, if you were to start with $100 bankroll and you wanted to just do it for fun, sure. Now, I would counter, and this is the last counter that I'll put on, and I do want to hear your thoughts on this as well, but I think it's an interesting conversation. Do you think, because I talk about this with DFS a lot, the concept of skill expression. So in DFS, I think the reason why people like DFS is that they can create in their heads this idea of how something is going to happen, and then they can put together this puzzle that speaks to the story in their mind. Now, with sports betting, I think that people do that kind of the same way. There's just less pieces. Do you think that OddsShopper is as much fun as just getting action down on your favorite team? And would you where's the bridge on that, I guess?
Yeah. So I think it kind of goes back to what your goals are, right? Like for some people, just making money is fun. And that is part of the experience over time at OddsShopper. And that's one of the reasons why all the results are public as well. Whether even if they were to be negative over a month sample size, or like, it's all public on the website. And it's information that people could use to better their profitability on the website. So even for myself, for instance, at the beginning of the basketball season, I was betting every single market. And then we had more data on this season. And then it was like, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't want to bet PRAs over at FanDuel. That's a tougher market to beat. What was your core question again?
Just the idea between the bridge between having fun and getting action down, sure, as a fan versus getting action down using tools, because I think there's kind of a disconnect there sometimes.
Yeah. So it's going to be a personal preference. I also think that if you're trying to get action down as a fan, your goal is probably not to be profitable. Like, you would prefer to be profitable, but that's not your number one priority. Your number one priority is just, you have a team you're already invested in, and emotionally, now you also want to be monetarily invested in. So for a lot of people, they probably have more fun just betting recreationally, because that's what their goal actually is. But if you're just using betting tools that are going to make you more profitable, then it also has a different element of fun where it's, hey, I still have things to sweat, but at the end of the day, I'm more likely to have made money than lost money. So it's kind of a personal preference thing. For myself, I find it more fun to be profitable. I think that's probably the boat you fall into as well. But I know for a lot of the people that are just casuals that follow you and I on Twitter, they probably don't even want to bet an under. They probably don't even want to. They might see a bet where they're a Lakers fan, maybe the best value possible on the board. There's a misprice. It's LeBron under 13.5 assists. And they're like, I can't bet against the king. That's my GOAT. Not gonna bet against that. So there are certain people who they will put profitability to the side because they just don't want to bet in that way.
Yeah, we have somebody over in the Paydirt Discord named Gugs. Gugs is infamous in Paydirt and the esports department Discords, but all he does is fucking bet unders. That's it. He doesn't have a process, right? Let me be very clear here. The motherfucker doesn't use models at all. He just basically sits there, and whatever side of his pants his balls are sitting on, he decides to bet one side or the other, right? But all he does is bet unders. And the other big piece of it is that he only bets unders that are plus money. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's fine. But the thing about him is that he'll go on these hot streaks, and then people will see him going on a hot streak of like $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever. And then they'll be like, oh, can you teach me? And I have to jump in and be like, no. You do not want to tail this dude. He's a losing bettor. He's admitted to being a losing bettor. You do not want to tail this, right? So and he'll always come back and be like, oh yeah, this again, always talking shit about Gugs. I'm like, no, dude, like, I love you. You're hilarious. But I have a responsibility to the subscribers of my site and the people who follow me to either keep them break even, make money, or make them better. And them following you is not going to do any of those fucking things. So I have responsibilities to keep that. And part of that is the responsibility of clarity and what's the word? Showing results. What's the word?
Transparency.
And yeah, transparency. There you go. Yeah, it's the responsibility of transparency. And that's one of the things that I really like, not only about this $100 challenge, but also about OddsShopper overall, and about a lot of tools, right? I mean, and most of the industry guys use Picket, and I think Picket is a really cool tool. And I'm going to kind of pivot here towards tools and industries overall. But so you obviously you came from the DFS streets, and you still play DFS. Like I know that you still play DFS, but you have a larger vested interest lately, I think, in betting. Would you say that?
Yeah, and there's multiple reasons for that. Mostly is just realistically that's where our space is heading, and you kind of get to a point where evolve or go extinct. And if you're somebody who has been a DFS content creator for the last handful of years, which is where you and I both come from, you could still do DFS going forward, but 10 years from now, sports betting is going to be such a bigger space than what DFS is, that if you haven't transitioned yourself into some of the betting content and you haven't started doing it now, then you're just going to get to a point where there's no content or employment opportunities for you in any kind of way.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. I said in my video that the user acquisition form of DFS is kind of a mature company at this point. If you think in terms of market dynamics, right? It's not a growth company anymore. I think that for the most part, I'm not saying that DFS is dead or dying or whatever the fuck, right? Like I'm not a doomsayer, but I do think that there's going to be less and less user acquisition over the next couple of years, and we have hit a point where people are deciding where their money is better placed and where their action is better placed. And there will always be an argument for DFS because of the asymmetric upside that you can have based on DFS plays rather than sports betting plays. There are always going to be parlays. Somebody fucking posted like an 85-cent to 140K parlay or some shit in the Discord the other day. And it's like, yeah, sure, you can do that, I guess. But the peer-to-peer aspect of DFS, it's not like any other money game that you can really play. So I think that it will always be around, but I think that the amount of quote unquote dead money, basically what we call the bottom 20% of any DFS contest, that will get less and less and less, right? Eventually, I think it'll be 10% of the pool is dead money. And then we'll all kind of be fighting, like all the high stakes guys right now basically fight over the same 10 grand every single night. So I do think that eventually the industry is going to have to continue to embrace sports betting. What I am interested in is the evolution of the tools and the modeling and the methodologies that go towards sports betting. Because as you know me, I'm a builder. That's what I do. I build out IP. I consult with companies to build out shit. Like that's what I do. I like building. And so my main focus is a little bit less on the content side, even though admittedly I need to do more goddamn content. But like my interest is more on things like OddsShopper, which is it's an incredible tool. But I also think it's kind of a basement level tool in regards to the way that we have tools for DFS, right? Like some of the tools that I have built for DFS, even just like the low level stuff, conceptually is considerably more difficult than anything that OddsShopper puts together. OddsShopper is just reducing the friction between getting the action down. So how do you look at, in 2024, right? Because that's been your bigger focus in 2024 was sports betting. When you moved from DFS into sports betting in 2024, what's one of the things that you noticed about the tools that are in the space and kind of how they evolved in even just a year?
Yeah, so I do think there's probably going to be a lot of parallels between the evolution of sports betting, the evolution of DFS. Where when did you start playing DFS, James?
2016. Yeah,
Okay.
about 9 years ago or so.
So there was publicly available projections then,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. So I
Projections
started
and
playing
very shitty optimizers.
So I started playing in college when there wasn't even publicly available projections at that point in time. I started playing, it was in 2012, I think was when I made my FanDuel account. So back then, there was nothing really available in terms of data to build lineups with. You had like a couple of Roto Grinder shows. EMAC did a solo show at one point. Him and I have talked about that. So there was content available. And that's kind of where we're at in sports betting as well, although there are publicly available projections. But a lot of people are placing bets from content. And we also saw that with DFS. Now, there's always going to be people that are placing bets based off that. But I think we're going to start to see tools evolve more in the same way they did in DFS, where more projections are going to be coming available. There are going to be projections in different kind of ways. There's going to be bottom up. There's going to be top down. There's going to be bottom up approaches to sports betting. And then ultimately, I think we're going to land in a similar spot as well, where then I think there's going to be simulation tools that'll come into the mix as well. But I do think we could look a lot at how DFS evolved, and not everything is going to be the exact same. But I think there's going to be a similar trajectory in terms of how people bet with from the public and what it is that they consume to better make themselves better bettors.
Yeah, and when I think about it, I think about OddsShopper as kind of like the first optimizer for sports betting. I mean, there are plenty of tools out there, right? Like, I'll show off really quick the Paydirt version of an optimizer here, right? So I have something called stat specific sims, and you can select, you can run everything, right? That'll take a couple minutes or whatever. But let's just go with player points. Actually, no, we'll do everything. It doesn't take that fucking long. So when you hit simulate prop category, and then it says, hey, here's all of the things that are happening, right? This is essentially what's going on in OddsShopper, but behind the scenes. It doesn't need to compile everything as soon as you hit the button. The only reason why I have it compiling things on the front end here is because I didn't build this in a way for me to maintain bets on the back end. I wanted people to be able to make choices on the front end. But this essentially does the same thing that OddsShopper does, where it's going to run simulations or not simulations, but actually, OddsShopper probably runs simulations on the back end, right? Probably simulates outer range of outcomes.
So in terms of what OddsShopper is doing right now, it's not running simulations, not at least not in its current state.
Okay. So this tool runs simulations. This tool runs things based on a range of outcomes based on a couple different distributions. So this one utilizes normal distributions for certain bets, and then also utilizes I can't remember what the other name of the distribution is, but there's 3 different distributions that are run through bimodal, normal, and then something I can't remember the name of. I'm sick, so fucking deal with me being sick and forgetting the names of things today. But so this runs things and then tells you, hey, here are the best bets that you can make based on the book, based on, here's the under, here's the amount of edge that you get, blah, 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 right? So this kind of optimizes things for you. But the cool thing that OddsShopper does is when you decide that you want to go bet something, you can just go here, find your player props. And the way that we do it at Paydirt and with the Paydirt group is we actually take these and then we run them through a little spreadsheet that I built for the guys who are running things. And then we find them and then we can just say, okay, well, I want to go place this, etc. here, right? And when you click on it, it will actually take you to go bet that thing, which is fucking sick, by the way. One of the reasons why I jumped into the Tails marketplace is because I thought that the access to this tool would be incredible. And being able to utilize it in conjunction with the Paydirt models is something that not only reduces the friction of getting the action down, but also allows it to be more widespread in a way that we couldn't produce content before. It's a really, really cool tool. So this is kind of what I look at when I think of the start of the tools that we are going to see for sports betting in relation to the way that DFS has done things. Now, that being said, I think that there are a lot of things that OddsShopper can improve on and can find kind of cool, interesting new ways to go about things. But why don't you talk a little bit about what OddsShopper can do and why, top or bottom level users can find uses for it?
Yeah, so this is just the live odds page that you're looking at right now. So what I use for my bankroll thread and for my own bets also
Mhm.
is the portfolio betting tools, which are right there. I don't know if maybe you have access to them. Maybe, yeah, here.
Oh, I do.
Okay. So what you would do here is you could actually make a portfolio. See where it says manage portfolios?
Yeah.
So you could click manage portfolio. Oh, there's a base one that's already in there.
Yeah. My
But
first portfolio. Yeah.
gotcha. But what you could do is you can make a portfolio, and this is supposed to be akin to investing as opposed to actually betting. And so what you could do is you can make a portfolio using our historical results. You can look at all the results for all the bets this year. I think we've had something like 53,000 bets that have been recommended for NBA so far this season. You go through all of that data and you could find out like, okay, bets that are projected for an EV of this amount have this
Mhm.
return. This market has actually had a negative 1% ROI this year, but this particular market, say like rebounds, because I know that that's been a softer market this year, like rebounds might have a
Mhm.
6% EV for the year. And so you build a portfolio of what it is that you want to bet on, which for most people using these tools is going to be the markets that have been most profitable. And then you could actually look at the results of that portfolio overall for the year. And you could even enter in, say, like, hey, if I place $10 per bet on all these bets in my portfolio, what would my return have been this year? And you could see that information as well. So the idea here is that you bet based on what you want to bet, because you could also, if you're somebody like you had said before, there's maybe you're a fan, you only want to bet on specific things, you could make that a choice for yourself as well. But if you're looking to optimize your return, you go through all the results for the year, you make a portfolio based on what it is that's going to get you the best return. And then when you go to this page each day, which I see your cat scrolling it right now, cat trying to find some hockey
Yeah. He's trying
hockey
to get his
unders to
action
bet, it
down.
looks
Yeah.
like.
Bubby's got to get his action down. For sure.
So then what you would do is once you have the portfolio built out, you have it selected each day, however many times you want to go to the portfolio EV page, you would look at here are all of the bets within your portfolio that fit the parameters you've selected. And
Right.
it tells you all the ones that are plus EV bets. What I like to do is I hide them after placing them. And then
Makes
you could
sense.
go back in, in the afternoon, couple hours later, at night or whatever, and you can look at all the bets that have not been hidden yet. Those are the ones you haven't placed yet, and you place those bets as well. And it's a pretty easy way that you could get 100 to 300 bets down in a single day without really it being too time consuming. There's also the mass entry tool there, which isn't supported by every single site, but like DraftKings, for instance, if you had DraftKings in your portfolio, let's say there are 80 DraftKings bets that are available at once, you could bulk enter them, kind of in the way that you'd use an optimizer for DFS, and you could just bet all of them at once.
Yeah. And like I said, this reducing of friction, that's the thing that I look at for OddsShopper. It's very similar to before. There weren't very many 150 maxers because optimizers were not a thing, right? Like getting 150 lineups built by hand was a fucking bitch. But now, there's hardly any friction in building 150 lineups and getting them uploaded on the DraftKings. FanDuel is another story because that site does not actually fucking work. But for 150 maxers and for people who are now betting, right? This tool is really, really cool. So you build out this portfolio and it basically gives you all of the bets that are within that portfolio range, right? Is there a way to look back just based on your portfolio and see
Yes.
kind of how you've done?
Yes. Yeah. So if you go to that portfolio EV drop down at the top, yeah, if you go to portfolio results,
Sick.
now, if you selected your portfolio from the drop down menu,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you had my first portfolio selected, then you could do preview results and you could either set it to this season, you could set it to previous season, you could look at last 7 days, you could look at last 30 days. It's also a good way because it's like anything else. You're not going to profit every single day. So a
Right.
lot of times I'll look at it and be like, hey, my results haven't been great over the last week. And then you go, look, it's like, have I been missing on something? And you go look back, it's like, it's just kind of been a bad run of variance, or you realize that maybe there's a market that I've been betting that I missed out. Maybe the books got sharper and it's like, oh, actually NBA points has been a tough market to beat over the last 30 days or something like that. And the results are dramatically different. But yeah, you can look at all the bets in that portfolio, which like you could see on screen right here. And you can see that of everything that you have selected there, it's 28,000 bets or so right there. And it is a 4% ROI.
Yeah. As somebody who works with a lot of data, this is hilariously impressive. Just like maintaining all the data on this on the back end is a feat. I know how difficult that can be. I know how large these betting databases end up getting. So this by itself, just for anybody who's watching and want to know the technical background of this, super impressive shit. I think this is really, really cool. And so for you and me, this is cool because of the availability to get action down and make money. From a novice point of view, somebody who comes to the site and then looks at it and says, I have no idea what I'm doing here. What would you just tell somebody who is like brand new to this stuff?
Yeah. So something that we are also go to the, if you were to go back to the, or actually, because we got the tutorials drop down menu too, easiest place to start is just tutorials. And then we've got everything in here kind of broken out. It's supposed to kind of tell a short story of how to use the tools and what they do and all of that. It's something that is very hard to organize on YouTube, which we made videos for YouTube, which I'm sure you've probably had this. If you're making evergreen content or just any sort of content that's supposed to have long lasting, tutorial or information to it, it could just get lost on YouTube for multiple reasons. If you're somebody who does daily content like we do, it just gets buried beneath all the other videos. You can make playlists with it, but it's kind of janky to find playlists on YouTube. So that's why we ended up making a tutorial page where we have all the stuff in here. And then also, if you go to the individual tools and you're not sure how to use something, most of them now have something here that says tutorials. If you see it on the right side there, if you go back to portfolio betting, yeah. So it says tutorials just below that on the right side. Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll direct you to there and it'll highlight the video that you should be watching for that. So within the next, say, like couple weeks or so, we're going to have that for everything that exists on the website.
Let me also just say this is a really slick way to handle this. We have some tutorials over at Paydirt, but I'm notoriously fucking bad at putting together docs or tutorials. Everything just exists in my brain. I just assume people can read my mind. But this is really, really good. I think that anybody who has not tried OddsShopper absolutely should if you're interested in sports betting. I'm going to answer a couple questions here from the chat just because I think there are some decent ones here. So this one's from Sean. I argued with Greg about the viability of someone who had a $100 bankroll signing up for OddsShopper or OddsGem months ago. Even though Greg, a seasoned pro who knows what to hit and do ignore, is up a few hundred, that is not factoring the cost of subscription. Greg needs to be honest and admit that it shouldn't be utilized under a 1-2K bankroll. So we did answer that question in the beginning because I have the same concerns, right? And I mean, people need to think about the action that they're getting down, not only relative to the raw money return, but also to the ROI that they're getting, as well as the cost of their subscriptions. One of my big gripes with DFS right now is that people have no idea how profitable they can possibly be on top of having to pay out $100, $200, $300, $700 fucking dollars. I'm looking at you, SaberSim. Like all of these different companies that are charging hundreds and hundreds of dollars I think they are part of the reason why DFS is going to plateau very soon, because they are making it so even people who do have a relatively small positive ROI that could grow into something better are squeezing that ROI out and making them negative ROI players because of subscription costs that come with the sites that they are subscribing to. Eventually, we run all of the new players out of town. Like the only people who can then afford to be in the system are the people who can afford to have all these tools. So I do think there is certainly a point to be made here of the $100 bankroll signing up for OddsShopper or whatever, right? From a ROI standpoint, 100% agree with you, Sean. And I think Greg does as well. I think from an ROI standpoint.
No, I actually don't, because so keep in mind too that if you were to factor in the cost of the subscription, which it was $25 to sign up for yesterday, and it's normally, because the idea here is, can you realize a positive return?
Yes.
And the answer is yes. If you were to sign up for, now it depends which tools it is you're signing up for. So the reason, actually, I remember this conversation I had with him as well, The reason I even started doing this is because Alex Monahan had said it. I think somebody had asked him what they should do. I think somebody said they were starting with $200 betting and wanted to know where to start. And he said to that person, there is no point in betting unless you could start with a bankroll of at least $10,000. And I quote tweeted and said, I strongly disagree with this. And that's actually what the idea of the bankroll thread came from, was to show that no, you can start with less than $100, or you could start with less than $10,000 and be profitable. So that was why I started with $100. That was what it initially sparked the idea. And then also at the start of the year, I think we had our subscription was on sale for $25. It was $25 before as well. So if you were to sign up, even at the full price for $100 the month, you would still be up, like following my thread to this point, you'd be up $400 right now. So the purpose of the back and forth that I had with Sean was that you could be profitable. I'm not telling anybody that you could start with $100 and you're instantly going to be making money to live off of, but you could certainly be profitable signing up for tools starting with $100.
That's a very fair point, and I agree with you on that. The point that he makes here is that Alex is saying get a job instead of a $200 bankroll, and I agree with that for like 6 months. Take 6 months, go work at Kohl's, go work at PetSmart, go fucking do a job for a little while. And then once you have like save all of that money, have a $5,000 bankroll or $1,000 bankroll or whatever, and then start using these tools to start generating an income that is actually feasible, right? But again, that's expectations. People go into these things thinking, oh, well, you know, I have this amount of money and I want to make this much. And one of the problems that I always run into, I did coaching in 2024 for a while, and it was really popular, but then I just ran out of fucking time. But the biggest thing that I would start with is, okay, do you plan to do DFS and sports betting for the next 3 to 5 years? Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. Do you understand that you won't make any actual money for the next 3 to 5 years? Like very, very realistically, you're going to have to do this for a long time to realize any kind of significant gains. Because people think of it like, oh, if I can get really good at this, I'm going to end up making a whole bunch of money that I can use to subsidize other things. And you have to be in it for the long haul, especially with sports betting. Like sports betting is less bumpy, right? But it takes a long time to build up to a point where your unit sizes are big enough to where you can actually make money, especially that's not even considering being limited. There's a lot of things that go into it, and you have to be in it for the long term. And that was the thing that I always ran into is I would do 1 or 2 sessions and people would be like, oh yeah, I'm in it for the long term, And then they'd cancel their 3rd session because they were out of money, because they didn't do bankroll management. And that's the thing that I think people run into the most. So my point on it is, Greg, I agree with you. You can be profitable 100%. I think you have shown it. And I have shown it as well in other bankroll challenges with DFS. I've taken $100, turned it into $1,000. Like people can do it, but the unfortunate reality is $1,000 doesn't matter to me. And that kind of sounds shitty, but like with the amount of volume that I get down, especially in sports betting, $1,000 just, it's a non-starter. So I see what Sean's point is on the argument. And I tend to agree that there are ways to make money in a more efficient manner if you have a small bankroll. But that does not mean that you cannot make money. Greg has shown that you can make money. You can absolutely be profitable.
And one other thing too, it goes back to what you were saying before. Everybody also, what their goals are and what they're trying to do is going to be different. A lot of people are betting on sports as a hobby, and they are going to do that no matter what. Mm-hmm. Now they have an option here to either find a way to make it a profitable hobby for them, or they could do it in a way where it's like, I don't give a shit about this money, I'm just going to lose it. But there are very easy ways available, whether it's OddsShopper or signing up for, say, like the Paydirt Tails package, where you could actually realize a return on that money. And this is something most of these people are going to be doing anyway. The alternative is if they aren't going to be sports betting at all, they're going to be doing some other hobby that also isn't going to realize them a return. People still need something to do with their free time. People aren't going to be working the entire day, which was one of the other issues that I kind of had with that point that Alex had brought up a while ago, where he said that, hey, this isn't even worth doing if you don't have at least $10,000 to start with. And it's all right, but what are they doing with their time instead? Because people still need hobbies. They're not going to, just because they don't have $10,000 for a bankroll saved up, it doesn't mean that now all of a sudden they're like, hey, I'm going to work 100 hours a week until I have it. That's not something they're going to do.
Well, and it's also about passive time spent versus active time spent. The active time you have to spend at Kohl's for 8 hours to make $48 or whatever after taxes is much different than being enveloped in sports betting for 8 hours, and your active time is only something like an hour of that, right? So I do think there are interesting points to be made on both sides of it. But it all just comes down to goals. If your goal is to make actual money sports betting or playing DFS, then you should probably save up some money first and then get into it after you have built up a bankroll. If you are going to be doing these things anyway, then you should probably be trying to not lose a shit ton of money while you are doing it, and therefore have like OddsShopper or some sort of service. I'm trying to cover up my cat's asshole while I'm saying this. Just some sort of service that is going to make it so you have a little bit of a better chance to not lose your ass.
One other thing I would add too is it's another reason I kind of disagree with the $10,000 starting point thing. I don't think somebody should go from not sports betting on a random day to all of a sudden, I'm going from not sports betting to I am now a professional sports bettor. There should be a ramp up period, which is another reason why I think it makes sense to start with a lower dollar bankroll. You kind of could have a proof of concept to yourself where let's say that even if you have the $10,000 to start with, I don't think it's advisable to start with $10,000 having never done it before. I think it makes more sense to start with $100, $200, $1,000. It's going to be different. What's a reasonable amount for different people? And just kind of trial and error. You're going to fail at some points. You're going to have successes. I'd rather learn with an amount of money that isn't super meaningful to me and have my pitfalls with that than have you built up working a 9-to-5 job. You go like, oh, cool. I've worked for 6 months to build this money up, and then you just get started and maybe you don't know exactly what it is you're doing. You don't want to find out with your money that you actually have saved up that you're trying to go full time with and fail with that amount of money. I'd rather fail with the lower dollar amount to start with and figure it out that way. That was how I did. I started playing DFS with $20.
Yeah, that is a very Squirrel Patrol-esque story. Whereas he basically, the way that he started with a lower dollar amount and played and decided that he had edge. And then what he ended up doing was actually saving up like 25 grand to then go full time into it. So I think that the combination of both of those points is you probably shouldn't just start with $10,000. Like you shouldn't go to a bank and take out a $10,000 loan and just fucking jump into sports betting. You probably also should start with a lower bankroll and understand that a higher bankroll is going to be able to get you a significant return faster than a smaller bankroll. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you have an understanding of those things. That's a really good point, that nobody should just jump into it. That's very fair. This question, Sims, and it's not a question, it's a statement. Sims and generating 150 plus EV plus lineups. I just automatically put EV after fucking plus now. 150 plus lineups is why DFS is dying. False. That is false. I think that Sims and generating 150 lineups actually is one of the edges that we have in DFS. I think that people are too heavily reliant right now on what the numbers say rather than heuristics. I think that will even back out. But last year, what we saw was that people were just, in MLB especially, there was such drastic fucking MLB every single slate because people were just jamming in what the numbers told them to do. And like, Greg, I think you had a hit. It was either last year or maybe the playoffs year before, where nobody fucking played the Padres. Not a single, like you were like the only person in the entire contest. It was a $25,000 hit. And you were like the only person that had like 100 Padres stacks or something like that, because they were up against a pitcher that all the projections loved and that the Sims hated the Padres. And it's like, but that's not how reality works. You know, like there's certain edges that you can exploit from understanding where the numbers have blind spots. So I would push back here and say that Sims and generating 150 lineups. Oh, and the 150 lineups part, there's a lot of fucking shitty people that are playing 150 lineups. Like you got to understand that 150 lineups don't make them good. there can be 150 really, really bad lineups. For reference, when I build the seed frames for Paydirt, which is what the contest sims are built off of, they have 500,000 lineups, and that is not even a quarter of the total lineups that can be built for a slate most of the time. So there's 150 bad lineups that are out there.
I think people don't recognize. I'm actually going to pull up right now our post-contest sims for the NBA slate last night. There's definitely, and I'm not saying this is where this person is coming from, who said that 150 lineups is why it's dying. Is that I'm not saying that they are saying that 150 lineups just guarantees that people are going to be profitable, but I see people say that all the time on Twitter, a little bit less so now than what it used to be. I am going to show people the NBA slate last night, which this is very, very common for NBA slates and just DFS in general. The majority of times people are playing 150 lineups, they are very frequently losing. It is very difficult to manage and play 150 lineups in any single sport.
God, especially in fucking NBA with late swap. Oh my God.
I would, if there's like a question related to that, I would be interested to hear more on what it is that they mean by that. But that's what supports contests. If you made everything single entry, the prize pools for NBA, for MLB, it would be like $6,000 to first place. Like, it's not possible to support big contests unless there are people who are able to play 150 lineups. And just because people are playing 150 lineups, I will. Do you mind if I share something on screen?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
All right. Yeah, I'm just gonna find the main slate last night. Okay. And okay. So I'm filtering by all the people who played 150 lineups last night. And you guys will see here, majority of them are not going to be profitable on a day-to-day basis. So here's all the people who played 150 lineups last night. There are a good amount of people that played 150 lineups in the main DraftKings contest for NBA last night. Profitable players. So this guy ended up winning the contest. Other than that, of the whatever this was, like 40, 50 people played 150 lineups. 4 of them doubled their money. A couple of people were minorly profitable. Everybody else lost money last night. So of the 150 max players last night, 6 of them were profitable out of a lot.
Shout out to CKK. He's Paydirt sub. Love that guy. Yeah, they're the vast majority of the time, man. 150 maxers are actually paying the money that you are winning. That's the way that I put it. Like it, and it goes both ways, right? One of the hard parts about this industry is that people pay me for the tools and for the projections and everything like that. And unfortunately, a lot of the time when I win a contest, it's their money that I end up taking, right? It's peer-to-peer. So it also goes the other way. When 150 maxers lose, they are paying the money of the person who ended up winning that GPP. Like it's all, you have to think about the prize pools as inclusive as possible. I think, let's see, we'll do this one and then we'll do some kind of closing things. Portfolio tool is very cool, used for a few months. Does it skip entering dollar amount on bets for mass enter for a safety reason or accidental bets?
Yeah. So the reason is because sites actually won't allow us to just place the bet for you. But what we are also considering doing is finding a way to group the bets together in the mass entry tool. So if you mass enter on DraftKings, for instance, it's super easy. If you upload all the lineups, there's a thing called stake all bets, and you can just bet with one click the same amount for all of those bets. But it doesn't take into account that like one bet might have 8% expected EV and one bet might have a 3% expected EV. And ideally, you would want to bet a little bit more on the higher confidence rated bet that has better value to it. So one thing that users could do is select bets together that have similar projected EVs. And so then when you're placing all those bets, then you could just bet all of them together with the same dollar amount. But we're going to find a way to do that in a way that's a little bit simpler. But yeah, as of right now, the only way you could do it at least one click would be to bet the same dollar amount on all of them.
So that kind of leads me into my next question, or I guess next questions. So when I was talking to Aton and I don't remember who the other guy that I talked to was, but when I was talking to them about tails, and I probably should have plugged tails more, but I thought this conversation was good enough that I don't care. One of the things that I want to do is be able to use Paydirt projections in the portfolio EV betting pools, right? In kind of a way of saying, here are either providing the projections per API and having that run on the back end for, portfolio EV, or have it be that the edges that are found in the Paydirt tools can be sent via API, and then users can bet on those, right? So, they had said, they were very persistent in saying you can't do that yet. So I know that it's something they're working on, which is fucking sick. But when you look at kind of the state of sports betting specifically, what do you think kind of comes next?
So I guess, do you mean from a tools perspective or the actual, like the industry itself?
Kind of both.
Okay.
I think that this can be a nice open-ended question, because I don't think that anybody really knows what's happening in the sports betting industry right now. It's still kind of the Wild West. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on kind of where we go from here.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I think are coming. Number one, regulations about how much sports books are allowed to advertise. If you're watching a football game, a basketball game right now, that's going to be what, like 50% of the advertising you see. The game's going to be sponsored by FanDuel. You're going to go to commercial break. You're going to see Caesars. You're going to see BetMGM. JB Smoove is going to yell at you about how he's the king of sports betting or whatever. So, you constantly see that on TV. I don't think that sticks for very long. Also, talking about bring this back to DFS and how I think there's a lot of parallels between it. We saw this happen with DFS as well, where advertising wasn't allowed to be done in the same way. I think the same thing is going to happen with sports betting. So that's something that I think, like, from a legislative end, is going to happen. Something else that I think is going to happen that's going to more impact what you and I do and how people actually place bets is peer-to-peer sports betting. A lot of places are trying it out right now, and there's different forms that it's kind of been put into play. Like there's markets that people have to use crypto on. There's also like those things called social sports books. There's DraftKings Pick Six. So there's all different kinds of realms where people are trying out peer-to-peer. I think it's because a lot of these books know that is what's going to come next. So I don't know what the form of it's going to be, but I'm pretty sure that's what's next.
I fucking loved Pick Six. I love the concept of peer-to-peer. I think that is my guess as to what the next big kind of game is going to be. I'm not actually sure why it didn't take off more in 2024. And even more confusing is that Pick Six basically tried to fucking kill their own product and now has a 42% rate. That's not
so I could actually talk to that a little bit. It doesn't actually have a 42% rake.
Sorry, 42% effective rake. It's not forced on it. I hear you, but yeah, continue.
So one thing with Pick Six, because there was a tweet that it didn't go viral in the way like social media tweets go, viral, but within our space, it was something that a lot of people saw, where somebody had said that there was a 42% rake. A couple of things that I think were missed out on that, though, is number one, it didn't take into account the amount of min payouts that people collect each day, because there is a guaranteed payout if somebody goes 3 of 3 or 4 of 4 on their card or whatever. But then also, one thing that is going to be a little bit tricky with a product like Pick Six and how it works, the rake is very different on a day-to-day basis. Sure. And so one day it could have a 42% rake, but it could have a negative rake another day as well. So if you have a slate where a ton of the chalk hits, DraftKings is going to take a loss in a way that they wouldn't in DFS. They could if there's overlay, but overlay doesn't really exist anymore. But there kind of is overlay in that sense that exists for DK Pick Six, because if all of the popular plays hit with the minimum payouts, with the 3 of 3, 4 of 4 payouts, there are going to be days where the contests end up paying out more than what DraftKings actually puts up in guaranteed money and what they take in. So I know from talking to DraftKings, their goal is, I think the number was like a 6 to 8% ROI, but also as they learn more about their new products, it's going to take trial and error for them to figure out what it is to size the contest and the minimum payouts to actually reach that number. So when I saw something like somebody saying, hey, this game has a 42% rake, and not me just like blindly defending the companies or anything like that, the issue I take with it is that it wasn't actually an accurate statement. And I don't really want to drive people away from peer to peer when it's something that I think has a lot of potential to grow. And it's to me not really genuine or a good thing to do to try to push people away from it just with like false information, which I think it was somebody who I don't know what their intention was, but I kind of got the sense that it was, hey, I get some impressions by shitting on like the big corporation.
Well, I mean, that account, I'm pretty sure that's sports projections. And they just like to run numbers on things and check rake on that kind of shit. I think that they have done, I've interacted with them a couple times, and they seem to me like they are an analytical person that wants to take a look kind of at the inner workings of DFS and stuff like that. That being said, I think that pick six, I mean, I have a subscriber who is up like 95K or something like that in 2024. And back in April, I convinced him to start playing pick six because, like, look, you're not going to have as consistent of a ride on it, but you can look at it as almost like an elevated cash game. If your average return, your average compounding return is 1.5 times you're paying every single day, you're going to make a ridiculous fucking amount of money. And at the time, this was when pick six, you had, I think I calculated it out to like a 35 or 36% edge or something any given day on pick six. It was legitimately fucking insane. And I understand why that needed to change, because the ecosystem was just going to dry up like instantly. The good players are going to eat the entirety of the population. But I do agree with you that peer-to-peer is the next way to go. I think that there will be some really interesting peer-to-peer / sports betting / DFS type of things. I also think from a tool standpoint, and I know that you have to go here in a second, but from a tool standpoint, something that I would like to see and something that Sheets has brought up is kind of like a hedging mechanism where between either sports betting or DFS or between the two, you can see what you need live and then be able to have options to hedge those things and see the EV of those hedging things. That is kind of my guess for the next high level tool. I mean, similar to the way that we had optimizers introduced for DFS into actual portfolio management systems. I think that's something that we see next down the line, is this ability to take the portfolio of your 300, 400 bets or whatever that is really, really hard to manage by itself, ingest those, and then also see real time, hey, you need this to happen. Here's the amount of money that you can get on this kind of hedge.
Yeah, there's certain, like, it would be hard to do that with a NBA DFS slate, but there are certain sports that it really sets itself up well for. In particular, if you play MMA DFS at all, the last couple of fights, you generally know where it is you stand and what it is you need to happen. I do always get terrified, though, that I'm going to bet a certain way and there's going to be some like crazy DQ and then I lose on both ends, because I had that situation early last year. It was a fight between Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier, where if Vettori won the fight, and I think he needed to score at least, it was like 86 fantasy points, I would have taken first in the flagship contest on DraftKings, just split with one other person. And I was kind of talking to people in Discord about whether I should hedge or not. And ultimately I didn't hedge and ended up not winning, which at the end of the first round, Vettori was like a minus 280 favorite or something like that. I was like, see, look, good thing I didn't hedge. And then he just fell apart after that.
Yeah.
But one of the main reasons I didn't end up hedging is because of the fact that there are some, like, you could get these weird edge scenarios. It's like something weird happens and he wins the fight, but he scores less than the fantasy points. And then I lose on both ways. And then it's like, oh, now I had this $15 lineup that stood to win $80,000. So I thought I should put a $20,000 bet on it. And now all of a sudden this $15 lineup that had a ton of EV, not only did it lose, but I cost myself a bunch of money on the other end as well.
Yeah. I mean, but as we're talking about the long term of things, that's probably one of the right choices if you could measure it, right? And that's what I mean, I guess, is being able to measure it and say, here's how much money you should probably put down on this. Because many people aren't going to put 20,000 down on it to cover the whole thing. But I think many people would think to themselves, should I put something down on this? And that comes into like, there's life utilities and kind of all that other kind of shit. There's so much nuance to it, but I think that those are tools that I think can and should exist in some capacity in the next year or two. The hardest part, like you said, with NBA is live feeds are finicky. And within 5 minutes or whatever, 5 minutes is a lot of goddamn time, especially when it comes to NBA. So, Greg, do you have any closing thoughts here, man?
No, guys, thanks for listening, especially people who chimed in with questions, and Sean as well. Didn't forget our conversation. I always like to be challenged on things. Makes me think a little bit, and then the harder I think, the better it makes me at being able to just promote what it is I'm doing, give more reason as to why it is what I'm doing. So thank you guys very much for watching. Check out James, because James himself said he didn't promote it enough. Check out James's Tails package.
Yeah, you absolutely should. Paydirt Group is up, I think, 5% ROI over the last 10 days or something like that. We have been doing really well. Today, I think we have 58 bets or something, it's funny. We have 58 bets, and that's nothing for a lot of people who are posting into these things. But what I would say is that we have a lot of bets that a lot of people are not putting down. One of the things that Paydirt has always specialized in is finding things that are kind of off of the board, which is why that subscriber has won so much money in pick 6, is because when Paydirt does well, it's usually on things that are not super frequent. So definitely go check out the Tails Insider for the Paydirt Group. If you are a Paydirt All Access subscriber already, I can get you 66% off your recurring subscription. You just have to message me. I sent out an email, but I know most people don't check emails these days. That's okay. Definitely have some discount codes there. But this has been great, Greg. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can do some more content, in the future. It'll probably be around sports betting, but maybe I can pull you back in the DFS streets once baseball gets back.
For sure. Anytime.
All right. Well, this has been a good stream. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will talk to you on the next Slate Talk / whatever the fuck talk this was. All right. Adios.